Hello, I'm Ty Newell, and this is My School Safe? This is a video to discuss making a COVID safe classroom and the steps needed, both in the operation of the building as well as behavior habits, and using the COVID safe space calculator. As discussed in our introductory video for using the COVID safe space calculator, there's a variety of interacting inputs. And these inputs, both building operation, the amount of fresh air, the level of filtration, and the behavior of people to get vaccinated, to wear good, efficient face masks, these all impact the ability of the disease to be transmitted and then your probability of getting infected if you're susceptible. And so those are the two outcomes that we want to explore in every space. But in this case, we're concentrating on school. Now, we won't actually use the calculator. We'll just show results from the COVID Safe Space calculator. And if you follow the usage of the calculator in one of our other videos, you'll see how to put these inputs in, and then you'll be able to use the figures you get there to compare with what we're doing in this example, hopefully giving you confidence so that you can explore on your own how to create a COVID safe space, and then discuss with other stakeholders that this tool is intended to be one that can be used by experts and non-experts alike to reach agreeable solutions for what makes reopening, in this case, a classroom, a safe space. So a variety of stakeholders who should be involved in these discussions with the overall goal of keeping our students, our teaching staff safe, and for hopefully getting to a place where we return to normal, hitting what's called herd immunity, where the infection no longer spreads and it starts to die out. So let's look at what I'll consider a typical classroom. About 21 people, a teacher and 20 students. Some of you may be laughing that I got 30 or more students. Some of you may have less, and you may have other situations, but I'm assuming about a 7-hour classroom day where you're exposed to each other. And anyone within this class might be infectious for that 7-hour long day. Now, if it's a 6-hour day or an 8-hour day, that's important for you to explore. And the typical building that we're assuming would have a carbon dioxide concentration level of about 1,200 parts per million. And as you follow our video on carbon dioxide, you'll see that that indicates how much fresh air is coming in. And that's an important factor in diluting and reducing the concentration of contagion that's in the room if there's an infectious person. So the steps we want to look at are reducing the carbon dioxide concentration and the associated contagion concentration. And if we go from 1,200 parts per million to 800 parts per million, that's a level, a reduction in carbon dioxide that indicates we've increased the fresh air ventilation by a factor of 2. We've gone from a level of about 20 cubic feet per minute per person to about 40 cubic feet per minute per person. That may sound outrageous, that may sound undoable to many of you, or if you're watching the energy budget, that you are picturing this as being excessive amount of air being brought in when you've told operating at 1,200 parts per million is adequate to meet standard ventilation. But I'm telling you, it is not expensive, and that the other benefits gained, reduce sick days from colds and flu, improve cognition performance by both teaching staff and students, and the improvement in air quality satisfaction all have value apart from making these spaces safe for COVID. That is, these actions that I'll recommend and that I'll show are ones that you don't drop once we get out of the pandemic. You want to keep them going because they're economical. Human value is more valuable than energy, and the energy cost we're talking about is only 1 to 2 pennies per hour per person for changing ventilation standards to this level. So there's the personal behavior side. Once we've increased fresh air and then added a better filter, the typical MERV 8 filter that buildings use to protect heat exchanger coils in air conditioners and furnaces, is not one that protects you from spreading a virus. You have to go to a MERV 11, 13, 16, or HEPA to get the viral protection. If you increase the filtration to a MERV 13 filter, and then you go to personal behavior. Personal behavior consists of effective mask wearing while the pandemic exists within a community, as well as getting vaccinated. And each of these steps moves us toward the level of herd immunity, in our case, what we call an infection multiplier of 1. And when we drop the infection multiplier below 1, the disease is no longer sustaining. An infection multiplier greater than 1 means that one person walking into this classroom is likely to make more than one other person infected. And when that number drops below 1, the disease will collapse. And the lower we make that infection multiplier, the faster it drops out. It's removed from our community. So as we look through this table, starting with the standard ventilation, starting with everyone susceptible, no one has immunity from the disease. We see that as we double ventilation, reducing carbon dioxide from 1,200 to 800 parts per million, we've almost dropped the probability that you'll get infected by an infectious person in half. Gone from 44%, which is about like a coin toss, heads, one day you don't get it, tails, the next day you're going to get it, to now a 1 in 4 chance that if an infectious person walks in, you're going to get it. And then if we also recirculate air through an effective filter, like a MERV 13, that will remove 90% of the virus in the air recirculation system, we almost drop your probability of getting infected again in half. We drop down to 14%. And associated with that, where we had an infection multiplier of about 9, we've dropped the infection multiplier down to 3. We're still in a range where this disease will rage and accelerate in transmission, but 3 is much better than 9. And then we start requiring people to wear masks, but maybe not enforcing it so well. So only 50% of people are wearing masks. And of that 50%, the mask efficiency, like loose fitting cloth masks or bandanas, are only 20% or less efficient in virus filtration. And so people exhaling virus are exhaling 80% of the virus that's coming out of their lungs. And the people inhaling air from the room are inhaling 80% of that 80% that's been passed into the room. And so there's still quite a bit of virus in the room. If we get more serious about mask wearing and we get a larger fraction of the people wearing more efficient masks, say 80% of the populace is wearing masks and they're wearing 80% efficient inhalation and exhalation efficient masks and capturing virus. Now we're getting somewhere. Now, if you're susceptible without any vaccination, about 2% probability you'll get sick. And we've dropped the infection multiplier well below 1, where it's not going to continue to accelerate throughout that building, throughout other schools, and within the community. As we start protecting people with a vaccine, we start going toward herd immunity. And again, herd immunity means the infection multiplier is 1 or less. The disease is not self-propagating. The most important thing to notice is that if you're not part of the vaccinated crowd, you're part of the susceptible group, the probability that you will get sick stays exactly the same, even though more and more people around you are now vaccinated and have immunity. So as we move to where 50% of that classroom's been vaccinated, and then 75% of that room has been vaccinated with a 90% efficacy vaccine, we see that the infection multiplier is dropping. Under normal conditions, standard ventilation, standard MERV8 filtration, it still doesn't get us to a place where the infection multiplier is below 1. So this disease is going to continue to accelerate, but it does slow it down. The lower the infection multiplier, the slower the disease is moving from person to person. As we implement increased fresh air ventilation, improved air filtration, we start dropping to infection multipliers of 1.7 and then zero point 0.9 as we get to uh, better fresh air, better filtration. And we start reaching a level of infection multiplier before 1 that is at a stage before we say have implemented effective and efficient mask wearing. Okay, so we start getting to this level without mask wearing once we get enough of the populace uh, vaccinated or immunized in some manner. But it's not all we should be doing. As long as the contagion exists and is traceable within the community, you need to wear face masks. So we see that then, say, 50% of the populace wearing a face mask, or 100% of the time, or maybe 50% of the time, 100% of the populace is wearing a mask. That that gives us some improvement, even with today's leaky cloth mask. But when we start getting more serious and have a larger fraction, say 80%, with more efficient mask filtration efficiencies, then we really knock this down. Again, the probability, the risk of a susceptible person getting infected has not changed, but the infection multiplier continues to get reduced through these combined actions until it's decaying at a desirable rate. Now, there's different pathways through the COVID safe space calculator, and you should explore these. For example, let's say you don't have the authority or the ability, or the system is too antiquated to change, but I'll guarantee you that you for sure can take other steps, opening windows and other things like that. And measuring the CO2 level is your key to knowing that that open window, that open door, or that increased opening on a damper has gotten that room or that space to 800 parts per million. You don't have to measure airflow, measure the carbon dioxide to see that you have sufficient fresh airflow uh, as, as shown in the calculator. And then if you don't have ductwork, or you're unable or don't have the authority to get the filters changed to where you know they should be, go to a big box store, grab a 1 or 2 room space air filters. I'm sure parents would contribute if you're in a classroom that has need for support and funding of that manner. For a few $100, you should be able to have 400 to 800 cubic feet per minute of good filter efficiency, MERV 13, MERV 16, HEPA filter filtration in that room. And this will be effective. So while you can do nothing except wear masks efficiently and effectively, and with enough vaccination, this will get you to where herd immunity's occurred. It doesn't drop you down to where you should be. And as we discuss air quality in other videos, there's other reasons why you want to increase fresh air above today's standards. That's why Walmart does it. That's why Kohl's does it. That's why any of your big box stores If you measure the carbon dioxide level in them, they're already at 800 parts per million, while almost every other building around you is not. People perform better, they get sick less often, and they're more satisfied with the air quality. And the same is true in a classroom, and for the same reasons, you want that level of ventilation. Now let's look at a different type of situation within the classroom. Yeah, it's hard to make people wear masks. And just think of having little kids effectively wear masks. So let's say you're a teacher and you're concerned, and you should be. So if you wear a mask in a very efficient manner, very conscientious manner to keep it on all the time, and you've got a good KN95 that's 90% efficient. But everyone else, the way they're playing around with their masks or not wearing them or that, they're in effect, maybe they've got a 10% exhalation mask efficiency. They're releasing 90% of the virus that's coming out of their lungs into the air. But you're wearing a good K95 mask and you're wearing it all the time. You'll find out that this does protect you, and it effectively protects you. And coupled with more and more people getting vaccinated, that should lead to good protection for yourself personally until you get vaccinated. And it should protect the classroom as far as getting the infection multiplier below 1 to a level where the infections start dying out within the community. But again, while this shows that you can be within a group of ineffective mask wearers and still protect yourself, you still want these other actions to occur. Improved fresh air ventilation and improved air filtration. So just to summarize that you want to improve ventilation and air filtration in every indoor space. Where we are now, what's called adequate ventilation by the building industry, it is not adequate. It's making us stupid, sick, and tired. We need to improve that for reasons other than the pandemic, but the pandemic is our immediate concern to getting this disease to die out within the community. And enhanced ventilation, improved filtration are among your most important steps for doing that. And then coupled with that is personal behavior, and this means everybody wearing a mask and everybody wearing efficient, good fitting masks. And with these steps, the disease dies out of your community. And once there's no longer a trace of the disease in your community, then the mask can come off. But as we discussed, for those within a community that are unable to get vaccinated, that they are still every bit as much of risk of infection if an infectious person, if the disease is still traceable within the community, they're at every bit as much of risk of getting infected. Herd protection, herd immunity does not protect a susceptible person from an infectious one. It's simply an indicator that the disease is dying out instead of accelerating.